Hello, this is Katie. Welcome back to my channel. I am going to be using Holiday Helpers Baked with Love and Sprinkled with Joy on this card. This is Christmas card number 4, and it gets involved, way more involved than I wanted to. I had this image in my head and I finished it, which was a challenge. So I was honestly trying to just prep, and I was going to film tomorrow, but then I got too deep in the prepping and figured I should start filming what I was doing. So I have these full stick Post-it notes where the whole back is sticky except for that little dashed end you see at the bottom, so you can actually peel it off the stack. And so I thought of that for masking. I couldn't find my Inkadinkadoo masking paper. I don't know where I put it in my craft room. I use a few Copics, but mostly Ohuhu markers, and I had this image in my head of elves baking in the kitchen. So I knew that I wanted to just stamp I also don't have the dies for the set with the oven in it, which is Sprinkled with Joy, because it's the cookie set rather than the baking set, which is Baked with Love. I don't have the dies for Sprinkled with Joy for some reason. I just never bought them. I should probably do that. And I knew I wanted to just stamp it down and then mask over it. And then I wanted to be like one of those magical Copic masters who can just run a bunch of Copics over paper and make a background out of Copics, which is insane to me. This is not perfect, but it was kind of freeing to just kind of scribble around and hope I come up with something. And I use my ruler to have some measurements somewhat involved. And so I do a lot of blending out. And if you watch any of those videos of people who can just make lovely, beautiful backgrounds for their images with just Copics, it is quite mesmerizing. And I'm sure is possible for anyone if you just practice a little bit, maybe just play with them. In this case, I'm using Ohuhu brush tip markers, which are fantastic. They are pretty much working like Copic, so I like it. But it's one of those things where you're coloring over stuff and then you accidentally put a color over onto your image, but then you realize later they're going to darken that part of the image anyway. So it just kind of opens you up to, like, you don't have to stay fully within the lines because of coloring you're going to do later and stuff like that. So you might see some of that in here as we go, but I'm just trying to focus on cabinets, and then we worry about the floor and the wall behind the oven stove later. This did take quite a lot of blending. I have actually sped this video up ×3 because otherwise it would be so very long. So it should be about like 15-ish minutes when I'm done. So here I'm just trying to blend out. Did I finish? I think that's how I left it. It's fine. And then, like, I got some brown on there, but I'm using a dark gray for the stove anyway, so that gets covered up. So just as an example, some brown leaked through to the stove, but the stove is going to be darker, so it doesn't matter. And then I'm getting a little more like free, like wiping back and forth my Copics as I'm coloring this stove oven, as you will see, kind of like here. It makes it kind of easy to stay along the line as well. But I'm going to be using C9, C7, and C5, I believe, to kind of blend out the oven. It's a little dark. As I was coloring this, I was like, I probably should have made like a light teal oven to make it cutesy, like a cutesy kitchen. But it was already too late for that, so there's no going back. I did pause in here a handful of times. Usually it was just to get markers I hadn't chosen already, so I didn't waste time off camera doing that. And I think a couple things I don't show you, but I'll explain. But most of this process I do show you, including how I make the floor and the wall, which was a process. The quote crafter math on my desk is a disaster. Normally I'm like cleaning up as I go and I'm not using that much stuff, but now my desk is just covered with markers and die cut pieces and just everything. And I got, at some point I addressed the Copic on my left index nail because I was very sad about it. I might just repaint my pointer nail and my middle finger anyway because they chipped. But at some point I got Copic marker, which will just sit on your manicure. There's no coming back from that. So keep that in mind when you're coloring. I don't know when I did it, but oh well. So then I am just finishing blending that out. I got a little bit on one of the little stovetop thingies, but that's going to be like a light gray anyway, so I can just blend that out. I think C3. And then I filled in the oven window. I eventually, when I go over with my white highlighter, my white gel pen, I draw like streaks in there, like it's a shiny window or something like that. And then just filling in with W9, just a different dark gray that isn't C9, that doesn't match the oven, just to make it look slightly different, I guess. So that is the oven scene. So now I'm going to, while I think about how to deal with that background, color in. I think I realized very shortly that this guy is off, out of the viewfinder. I'm so sorry. I started coloring, so I wanted like her to be red and him to be green, but I had started coloring him, and then I put green right under her belt, so that's why it looks like dark red right now. I'm using R2 and R1 for the reds, and then I believe YG1 and YG2 in the Ohuhu markers. So the shadow under her belt is because of the green that I put there by accident. And then just filling in the shoes and the belt, GY1 and GY2. GY2 is the darker green. I really like these two greens and how they blend out, and also this red set as well. And then they're both going to be blonde and have the same skin tone, just because there was a lot for me to color and I didn't want to have to come up with any more combos. I was trying to use mostly my Ohuhu markers, but I used Copics for the oven and stove, and possibly a couple other Copics for other stuff. This combo for their skin is a pretty good 2-color combo out of the Ohuhu set. And then I just use I think C1, a really light, or N1. I have only one Copic neutral gray, and I have N1. I don't know when I got it. I think I got it at Michael's. And I figured it was just a different gray to offset everything else. And then I used the colorless blender to blend it out. I just wanted to give that a hint of not white, just so it didn't look uncolored, basically, because I do that sometimes when something is white. I just don't color it in. But I wanted that to look like something was there. And then the cupcakes are going to be red and green, and just to stay with it, and because there aren't too many red-green color combos in the Ohuhu set, I just did the same color combos as the Elves have, and then blended those out. And then I just used their skin tone colors on the cupcake wrappers, just to save having to look for more color combos. The set does only have 72, which is a lot. But I was trying not to make this scene just a vomit of colors so that it didn't look very good. So I tried to keep some of the color combos the same of the different things I was using. And then there's two browns that were in the cabinet, the 2 darker browns I used on the spoon. And the same colors as their hair I used for the butter, that's a vegan butter, in case you're wondering. All of these baked goods are vegan. And then I did step out a little bit with the stand, the cupcake stand, and the bowl, and did some purple and some blue. I really like these 2 combinations that they have. There was P4, P3 for the purple combo. I probably could have done my shading a little bit better to make that look a little nicer. But these two combos were pretty good for only having so many blues and so many purples in the set. And then I paused and then I forgot to start recording. I just used a Sharpie pen to draw in like a pile of batter. And then I just used the BR3, the lightest one I use on the cabinets, and the darker part of their skin tone for like cupcake batter. And then just filled in the lighter color inside the bowl. I know that would probably be darker, but that's fine. So I said I would color that later, actually color that off camera. I think I find a pink combo. So what I'm trying to do is sort out like wallpaper. So I took the mask. I realized I was still zoomed in. I took the mask that I already had and stuck it in the right spot on the blue paper. And then I'm cutting very carefully. I end up scraping off some pink Post-it because it was just a little off and I had left some on the blue paper. So then I'm marking so I can chop off the sides and then size this to fit onto the background. So I put the black marks just on the outside so I could cut off the black marks and know that I have the right width. And then in the background, if there was any gap or whatever, I filled it in with that black Sharpie pen. So here, now that I have that, I had a little mishap with the cutting, so I had to cut it a little more, but then I just took the black pen and kind of filled it in so that you wouldn't be able to tell when I had to trim the blue, if that makes sense. So I just used my art glitter glue, which I love. Again, has not clogged on me yet. I will be happy with it until it clogs. And then just matching this up to the stove, and now we have wallpaper. And now I'm mad about my Cupcake fingernail or my Ohuhu fingernail. I'm not sure who the culprit was because I was not paying attention. So now I found this little piece of paper. I didn't show you the paper pads either of these came from. It was one paper pad, and I'm sorry. And I'm not in my craft area right now, so I don't know what it's called. But it was some fall set. So I managed to get a strip with nothing on it but wood. And then I realized that the cabinets were also there. So I had to cut a line. I couldn't just cut out the oven piece. I had to cut a line and then around the oven bottom and then a line straight out again to cover the cabinet portion. And so then that is going to be the floor. And so I'm filling in some background again, some of the gap so that you can't see. Sorry if that cut off. This filming had to be in 2 pieces and I have to voice over the clips separately. So I just run my tape runner along on the card itself, the card base, and then stuck that down so that I could just trim it from behind. And now we have a wood floor. So now I need to come up with a sentiment. I am using Christmas Wishes from Sprinkled with Joy, I believe, and then Baked with Love from Baked with Love. I just wrote 11:11, like 11:11 make a wish on the clock. I'm assuming that's an oven clock. I probably could have centered that better. So now I'm just kind of working with the layout and trying to figure out where everything is going to go. It probably looks like a silly situation in the end, but that's what worked. And I wanted to include all the pieces that I colored and die cut out. So I'm just trying to figure out, I was placing stuff on the stove, but the stove, it just doesn't look right covering it up because there's just too much, I think, going on behind it. When you're doing the layout of your cards, it's probably just something you can, feel as you're doing it. If you put something in front of something else and it's just way too obvious, it's covering up too much. I just don't want to stick anything on the stove. So then I paused for a little bit because I had to play with the situation and put everything where I wanted it to go. And now I'm just gluing it all down. And the little elves are whimsically holding their items because I didn't want to overlap or cover up their hands. I think it's cuter to just have them floating, holding it, if that makes sense. I didn't want to put the butter on the stove and there was nowhere else for it. And so the butter's on the floor but elves are short and maybe they keep some things on the floor so they can reach it better. I don't know. It's fine. It's a clean kitchen. So then we're sticking down the cupcake stand, and I'm going to put 3 cupcakes on it. So I'm going to put 2 just glued down, and then I actually grab a little sheet of Stampin' Up! Dimensionals that I have to stick up the 3rd cupcake. And then I think in between somewhere in here, I paused and made a card base and stuck the background down to the card base. So it is a card now. So now I'm just adding white accents, and I spend probably a lot of time doing that for the rest of the video. I am adding these a little willy-nilly. I'm not being too careful with them. But I think sometimes that can be cute as well if they're just very wispy. And I am turning it because I am constantly, and not anymore, I really only did it once. You'll only smear a bunch of white accents once with your hand before you learn to just turn the card and do it another way. So that was a very involved card number 4. I hope you enjoyed it. It took a very long time. I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.